the software that you're working on there, Enhanced D, Sam. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Understand, was it developed during COVID? Was that a period when you were working on that, or was that something that was in the pipeline for a while?
So with this, what we're trying to do is help people around exercise in terms of the barriers that people are facing. So there's fear of hypoglycemia with exercise. There's difficulty of managing it, and also the motivation as well. And we're starting off with a level of helping to simplify the data and have it in one place. There is a problem with like data overload, but also the way in which the data is presented to people on like CGM. It tends to be extremely clinical looking. And there's not really a kind of more user-friendly approach to having that data. The other thing with that data is that when you want to exercise, if people go to see their endo, a lot of the times their endo isn't like an exercise specialist, or kind of, I've seen a lot of times that the endocrinologist will kind of suggest that they don't focus so much on exercise. They focus on other aspects because the exercise is creating fluctuations in the glucose. It's just easier just not to do so much exercise. And so that leads to a lot of like self-experimentation, of searching online, trawling the internet, trying to find out what's the best way to manage my glucose with insulin, with type 1 diabetes. And we're trying to basically put all of this information together. So the first stage is simplify the data and then add context to that with like education, which is kind of trusted, and then suggestions around what you should do or where you are at most risk. So like if you've done a certain type of exercise, the plan is that we'll then be able to guide you through the type of thing that you should be doing after that in order to avoid a hypo, or to optimize your kind of management. The whole idea of this has come from a mixture of working with all kinds of people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and just this frustration that we found of where the data is just in different places and how the conversations are always so dispersed. So you'll quite often have a conversation which is just about exercise itself, like what you do, what you train, just about nutrition, and just about glucose. And the conversation about glucose is very often relying on like memory as to what you did in a certain situation, trying to match up what you think you did previously on where you're seeing your glucose is going. But if the information was together, then you would be able to easily spot the pattern. And then if it's given context, then you understand, okay, I understand why that happened. Not just you went lower because you did exercise, but the reason behind why you went lower. Oh, it's because the exercise meant that like more glucose went into my muscles or whatever, and then I went lower. So therefore I need to do this. And I think that would help a lot of people.
That's brilliant.
Does it provide information on the intensity of exercise in relation to how that's affected the glucose levels, or is it just more so like these are the benefits of exercise that have like increased insulin sensitivity or?
Yeah, so we started off with mapping the exercise with the glucose data. So your data is coming in automatically from if you're wearing a wearable, or if you're using like Strava. So if you're using Strava, you know that you did a certain type of cycle ride, you know the intensity, and then it's time stamped with your glucose, so you can see exactly what the impact of that was. And then what we're currently working on is matching that with the right educational material. So the type of ride that you did corresponding with the type of information, so that it's matched up and so that you can act accordingly. And then future versions, we will like to add in increasingly like predictions and things. But our main goal with this isn't to create something else which burdens people with too much more data. It's to simplify processes. It's to make things automatic. Yeah, I think exercise is something which is kind of left behind in terms of the glucose management, and it's something that we want to bring in. And then the other thing is kind of the how to exercise and the motivational aspect. So these closed loop systems and things like this are moving forward very quickly. They're very good, but under conditions of exercise and rapid changes in glucose, they're not so good at the moment. They can't really cope with those situations. If you were to just sit still, then you'll have really good flat lines on your glucose trace. But if you do something which causes a rapid change, like eat a high carb meal or you do exercise, those things don't work so much. So the human, the person, the individual is still really like in control of that still is the most important aspect of that. So rather than moving to a world where technology is completely relied on, can we make a way to help place the individual at the heart of their decision making so that they understand like what's going on and how to act best?
Man, that sounds amazing. All of that data is stuff that I'm trying to track, every day for years now. I've had diabetes for 12 years and I feel like I've got the hang of it, but to teach each individual about their personal response to exercise, to nutrition, their blood glucose curves. I mean, it sounds like just such incredible platform. I'm actually pretty keen to try it out now. I'm gonna jump on after this if it's available.
Yeah, absolutely. It's available on our website, and there's a free trial at the moment, and I can go through it with you. But the other thing as well, I think, is that the other idea behind this is that a lot of research, a lot of information, because these projects are so difficult to perform and they're very expensive, a lot of research projects are performed in people like less than 12 people. Like these projects where the guidelines are based on really small sample sizes, mostly young males, very kind of homogenous groups, and some projects even have like 7 people, and that's what you're kind of basing all of this information on in terms of like work around resistance training and type 1 diabetes. There's less than like 5 studies I can think of which has been done in resistance exercise and blood glucose response in type 1 diabetes. And of those, there's very small sample sizes. And a system like this allows you to see like your diabetes is very different from the 12 people who were in that study. So rather than taking something that's read from that and then applying it directly to yourself, or having an endocrinologist that says, well, I read this project and your glucose will do this, because it probably won't. It might do something completely different. With a system like what we're creating, you'll be able to see what is you as an individual. So how can you react? How can you like adjust your behaviors or whatever?
Yeah,
in order to simplify.
And just to sort of reiterate how complex this is, your response to a workout can be different in the same individual, the exact same workout. Maybe it's like a morning gym session, but under stress or a sleepless night or a bit of sickness, my blood glucose response will be completely different. So it's not just learning what does a type of exercise do to blood glucose, but in what context? How much sleep did I get? Was yesterday a high carb day or a low carb day? How many times did I go low yesterday? Like all of these things, play a role in diabetes management. I think it's so hard to educate people, especially this is what bothers me about not people without diabetes wearing CGMs and trying to analyze the data. They're changing their diet, they're changing the way they train based on CGM data without an understanding of the basic education around well, what are the other factors that influence these things? You know, I saw someone post a thing where they did a high intensity interval training workout and their blood glucose went up a little bit. This is somebody without diabetes. And they decided to stop doing high intensity training to try keep flat lines, you know, because they were a low carb, advocate. To change your exercise strategy in the pursuit of flat lines in somebody without diabetes, to me, just seems like such a misguided approach. You know, for the way I see it is like what you were saying earlier is, what's the life you want to live? And then how can you make that work within the context of your diabetes? And if you're going to wear a CGM and you're looking at these trends and patterns, how can you understand the background behind these trends and patterns? You know, is it relating to sleep and nutrition and stress and all of these things put together? It's like a storm of variables. So it is really hard to understand this on an individual level.
I guess you.
Yeah, and that's what we're working to. So within the system, you can integrate your, if you have them, like sleep wearables, like if you're using an Oura ring or something like that, and you can monitor if you're ill or sick or stressed, and also what your nutrition is. And I've seen a lot of people, I've met a lot of people who have extremely elaborate like Excel files that they use to kind of track what's happening and try and spot patterns. But we're trying to make this kind of more automatic. And the overall goal is that the diabetes educator that you're working with or the endocrinologist that you're working with will also have access to this system. And then they will have the context of the data so that they can work through with that. They can work with that with you rather than looking at something. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've seen so many times this kind of like defense of somebody's glucose trace. When somebody goes in to see their doctor, sometimes the doctor will identify like a big spike in the glucose or a hyper. And you see the person who's kind of saying, yeah, but that was like 1 day out of 30 days. That's not normal. That was a day when I was sick or something like that. And there's currently no way to kind of filter that out that day and just focus on the regular days, focus on what's going on most of the time, work out how you're doing those things. And then you can start working on things like, I don't know, fasted exercise training, identify, okay, that works. The doctor can see that that's working. I can see that that's working. We agree. And then everything becomes simpler. A lot of people can't remember like 2 or 3 days kind of in the past. It's very difficult to remember what you ate 2 days ago. So when you go into see your endo and they're asking you about the last 3 months or the last 6 months of data, there's no way you can do that.
Yeah, without context, you can make changes that are detrimental. Like, I'll give you a perfect example is when I do very high intensity sprint training, first thing in the morning fasted, my blood glucose elevates significantly. It can go from 5 to 15 plus in the workout. Now, if you take that to an endocrinologist who doesn't understand the importance of exercise or doesn't understand why that happens, they might say, that's not a good kind of exercise for you. You should stop doing that. Whilst, a more responsible answer would be, what would happen if you had just a small amount of insulin on board before that workout? Would that attenuate that spike and keep you pretty much in range? And the answer is most of the time, yes. The other question is, what if you did that at a different time of day? What if you saved that high intensity workout for later in the day? Would you have the same response? Most likely no. So the context is so important. And I think that, educating the endocrinologists and diabetes educators is a big piece in this. And that's where exercise physiologists play a really important role, is understanding what is the literature around these types of exercises and the impact on blood glucose, and what are the strategies that work? What can you actually do that is still safe and effective? Because people think that having insulin on board when you exercise is dangerous, full stop. It's context dependent. Yes, it can be dangerous if you have a lot of insulin on board and you're doing sort of a steady state, moderate intensity, continuous style training. Yeah, you can probably see your blood glucose crash rapidly. However, if you're doing high intensity intervals or sprint training, having some insulin on board can actually attenuate the spike and keep you in range. So it's just understanding your response to the exercise and what are the safe strategies that are known to the individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the information is so essential. Understanding as well why something is going to happen. I kind of liken this in a way, like just a stupid example. It's like when I was learning to drive, I had one teacher who used to just slam on the brakes as soon as I did something wrong, and he would just say, "Why did you do that? Why did you do that?" And I'd be kind of guessing the answer to kind of guess what he wanted to hear. And then I got a different teacher who would explain to me what I had done wrong and why I had done wrong. And then I never did it again. But when you do stuff like if you have a hypo after exercise and you don't know what you did wrong, you might do that again because you haven't learned anything. You just need to be kind of shown what you did wrong and why it went wrong, like the mechanism behind that. Doesn't have to be super complicated, but I think that so many people would benefit from just like a simple layperson explanation as to what has happened, and then you just move on and you don't make that mistake twice.
Absolutely.
Sam, so would I be correct in saying that with Enhanced D and the software you're creating, basically draws in the data from a variety of different applications or software that you might be using, filters that data, provides practical applications or input in terms of, you know, why your glucose levels are changing in certain manners, and then has information and resources to help that individual better control their diabetes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are a very early stage startup. There's only 4 of us, but yeah, that's where we are. So we currently have a platform where you can integrate all of your devices, where you can do it manually. So there's a patient-facing view and there's a clinician-facing view. So what we want to do here as well is not create something which is just for the clinician or just for the person living with diabetes. We want to kind of help the conversation between the two. By having the context behind the data, and then we're building our mobile app at the moment. The mobile app will have additional things around like exercise plans, specifically tailored to what your goals are. So like if you're training for a 5K or a marathon or triathlon, and it will have the context of your CGM always at the heart. So a lot of people living with diabetes have exercise goals that they want to reach, which are like run a marathon. We want to kind of supply that as being like trainers and coaches for people. And then if you have the glucose data, it's already there, so that it's all in one place. It's meant to simplify. We're not trying to like make something more complex than it has to be.